as me and this girl were literally inside the cabin. Out of nowhere, we ended up seeing one of the sisters walk into the cabin, and she saw me and her doing the devil's tango. And at that moment, I knew I got caught at church camp. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a super crazy but embarrassing story. Now, this story starts off back in my grade 10 summer year. So basically the summer of me going from grade 10 to grade 11. And around this time, I'm not gonna lie, my grade 10 year was just full of me playing video games and basically doing the devil's tango with a lot of different girls. And since I was so distracted with all the women in my life, I remember that basically ended up leading me to not be the smartest at school. So I remember after the summer after my parents ended up seeing the grades that I got for that school year, they were pretty upset. They were upset to the point where they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't want me to, you know, have a good summer, I guess, and they were thinking about taking me to summer school. But I remember one of my family friends ended up coming over one day, and when he came over, he was some old guy that was really wise and someone that my parents looked up to. And basically one time as we were all sitting for family dinner, I remember this old guy ended up saying, "Bubba, you're a Christian, aren't you?" Yes, sir, I am. I know a lovely summer activity that is happening, and you should go. Right as he said summer activity, my mom was about to shut it down and be like, no, he needs to stay home, and he's basically going to end up going to summer school. But before she could say that, this old man said, "Yeah, you know, there is a church camp going on, and I think you would do great in there. Meet some lovely people." Right as he said church camp, I'm not gonna lie to you, I looked over at him and my parents and thought, bro, what? Me going to church camp is like the devil walking into the church. Like, I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, for God's sakes, I literally say the word devil's tango on this channel. But basically, he ended up telling me that, and I just said right after, looking at my parents, I don't know about that, to be honest. That's up to my parents, and I think my parents have plans for me this summer. But then my dad interrupts saying, "Oh, actually, Bubba, I think it would be good for you to go to church camp." What? Dad, you're joking, right? "No, I think you should go to church camp. It'll be good for you, my son. You'll learn the ways of the Bible and become a good man." Now, I'm gonna say one thing. My family is Christian. I grew up in a Christian household. So, you know, I was not foreign to the Bible. Like, I've been to church every Sunday, and I knew what I was doing when it came to saying Bible verses. But going to an entire camp for an entire week? Like, we already have to sacrifice Sundays. Why do I need to go for an entire week to a camp? I remember I was super against it, and I was basically trying to convince my parents not to let me go. But, well, for some reason, old people have just the greatest ideas in the planet, which I'm totally lying about. They don't. There's a reason why they're old. And I ended up staying silent the rest of the dinner time just so no crazy ideas would come up even more. I remember after dinner ended, this old guy ended up going home, and basically me, I went upstairs to my room to play some Call of Duty because I wanted to enjoy somewhat of my summer I had left. And that's when my mom ended up walking into my room. She walked into my room and said, "Bubba, can you pause the game? I need to talk to you for a second." "Mom, I can't pause an online game." "Okay, well then turn off the Xbox. I need to talk to you right now." I remember I turned off the Xbox and I ended up sitting down on my bed with my mom, and my mom handed me the flyer that this old guy was talking about with the church camp on it. I remember I ended up looking through the flyer and it looked pretty boring. Don't get me wrong, the activities were cool, like rock climbing, swimming, lake jumping, you know, pretty cool activities. But I'm not gonna lie, like, I just didn't feel like it would be a place for me to go to. But that's when my mom told me, "Bubba, me and your father really want you to go to this church camp. So pack your bags, you're going to be leaving next weekend." I remember I was so upset at that moment. I remember I was furious because I feel like my parents were doing this to punish me, but at the same time, like, bro, what am I gonna do at church camp? Anyways, from there, I remember that entire week was just me being super upset. I was so mad. I was so furious. And when it finally came to the day of me leaving for church camp, my parents ended up dropping me off at a church, and we all got on a bus and started heading to, well, the middle of absolute nowhere. I remember as I was sitting on the bus though, heading there, I ended up actually knowing some people that were from my church, and they were very surprised to see me on that bus because some people at church were like my age and they knew my reputation back in high school. So yeah, like I said, they were basically looking at me as if I was the devil. But I remember I ended up just basically keeping to myself and talking to some of them once here and there. And then afterwards, when we finally got to the church camp, 3 other buses ended up pulling up from other areas. Some people even came and flew in from like LA to come to this church camp. I didn't know how big of a deal this place was, but apparently it was a pretty big deal. So I remember as everyone everyone was coming off the bus, we all ended up getting into our groups and we ended up going into our cabins. And this is where things got pretty cool because I got put in the guys' cabin, and me and all the guys, we ended up basically like all like introducing ourselves. And I started to realize a lot of people in there were kind of just like me. Like we were all young, cool, and honestly, we all loved video games and like superheroes. So, I mean, I had some stuff in common with them. So I remember we ended up going to all the activities that church camp had. And honestly, I could get more into it, but honestly, let's get to the juicy part of this story. Because I remember lunchtime came around, and this was the first lunchtime. And basically, I ended up getting my meal, and we all sat down as if we were in the cafeteria of a high school. And as we were sitting there about to eat, I remember someone comes up to the front of the stage and says, "Okay, guys, we're gonna be praying for our food, so everyone bow your heads." I remember everyone started bowing their head, and I started kind of like looking around because I'm not gonna lie, like I have this thing where if everyone around me is praying, like I kind of just like to look around and see what other people's reactions are. And I'm gonna say this, I was the only one to do this. But I remember as everyone was bowing their heads, I ended up looking at a girl that was staring directly at me. She was looking at me and staring at me as if I was like a bad guy, but at the same time, she was like attracted to the bad guy. Like I have really no idea, but she was just staring me down like nonstop. I didn't know what was going on and I was so confused, but then I ended up bowing my head just for her to basically stop looking at me. I kind of got uncomfortable, but this girl was definitely super attractive. After everyone prayed, I remember everyone started eating and I started eating my food and basically, you know, enjoying my meal. But right after I finished, I ended up putting my plate away at the spot where you're supposed to like, you know, put away all your dishes. And as I was putting my plate down, the girl that was staring at me earlier when we were all praying walks up to me. She walks up to me and says, "Hey, like, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from just the city away. What about you?" "Oh, I'm just from LA. I just like, you know, flew in because my parents wanted me to go to church camp." "Oh, funny you say that. My parents wanted me to go to church camp as well." Well, I mean, makes sense obviously because we're both here. I remember she started giggling and she said, "You're kind of funny." Thanks," is what I told her. And basically me and her, we started to basically talk about life and stuff and how basically, I'm not gonna lie, me and this girl were very alike. Because not only did we both play video games, which was a major shocker for girls to play games back then, but me and her, we also got along because we were both major players. No joke, we ended up spending the entire like lunchtime together, or what we had left at least, basically talking about us being players in high school. And it got to the point where me and her, we ended up basically challenging each other saying, "Okay, listen, I think I'm definitely better at the Devil's Tango than you." "What? No, you're not, Bubba. You don't understand what I'm good at, okay? There's a reason why my parents sent me here." At that moment, me and her stared at each other and we both realized that there was no way to properly settle this other than us actually doing the Devil's Tango. So this girl ends up saying, "Okay, well, like, let's do it. I'm sure there's somewhere to do it around here." "Wait, what? You want to do the Devil's Tango?" "Yeah, like, I'm sure we'll find a spot. Just go throughout the day and just tell me if you find something. And I'll message you. Here, what's your number?" I ended up getting her phone number and the service there was really spotty, so there was like very slight chances of our messages going through, but it was better than nothing. After that, a couple days went by throughout church camp, and well, one thing led to another. I remember one night, I ended up getting a message at like 10 p.m. when it was supposed to be lights out. I ended up getting a text from the girl saying, "Hey, Bubba, I found a spot. Meet me outside right now." "Right now? Are you sure we're allowed to?" "Yeah, it's fine. Just go out the back door." So I remember I ended up going out the back door, and me and her, we ended up meeting up at the front of the cabins. I looked at her and said, "What are we doing here?" "Bubba, here, just follow me." She ended up grabbing me by the wrist, and we ended up running into a cabin that they would only use for like special events. And basically it was a giant area with like a pool table and like some couches, and it was like a separate cabin for us to play in. So me and her, we ended up going on the couch, and well, one thing led to another. We ended up doing the Devil's Tango right then and there, like right away. We didn't even like exchange any words. We just got straight onto it. And as me and her were doing the Devil's Tango, I ended up hearing some rocks being kicked outside, and I felt like someone was coming, but I was too much in the moment to stop. And well, one thing led to another. Let's just say we ended up hearing a door open to the doors of the cabin, and that's when one of the sisters, by the way, yeah, like I'm talking about like a full-on nun, basically walked into the cabin and saw me and her doing the Devil's Tango. And what she said was so funny because she says, "Oh Lord, have mercy. What are you guys doing in here? Are you serious right now? The Lord would be ashamed. Doing it before marriage is wrong." And at that point, like me and her, we ended up putting our clothes on as fast as possible as she was watching us doing it. And she ends up sitting down with us, and we thought she was gonna, like, you know, basically yell at us. But what she ended up doing was she ended up sitting down beside both of us as we were sitting down getting lectured. And well, she ended up whipping out the Bible and started reading out verses that we needed to hear, apparently, about basically how doing the devil's tango before marriage is a sin. Out of all the ways to be punished, this was little next to nothing. But hey, let's just all agree to not do what I do and just fall for more embarrassing stories just like this one. Peace out, guys.